Let's talk about risky draft picks. I did an article last year in season for Fantasy Pros where I talked about the safest and riskiest starts in the flex range every single week. It was a really fun article, so I thought that I would bring the concept to you guys. And I looked at players in more of the mid to low end draft range that had the biggest standard deviation of rankings from fantasy analysts. The high end players are not hard to figure out. We know we're clicking the button for Bijan Robinson without hesitation. But what happens when you get to Jadarian Price and Quinshad Judkins? I'm going to focus this video on the riskier picks. If you want the safest picks, drop a comment. There were a lot of names. There were a lot of names on this list. I'm not going to lie. So I narrowed it down to the players that I think will be some of the more heavier debated flex range players this season. Jadarian Price will be one of the most debated draft picks this season, and I can see both sides of it. Price was the clear RB2 of this draft class, and it was not even close. He's a first-round pick with significant upside in an extremely run-heavy offense. We should naturally feel very comfortable. And for what it's worth, as much as we fear the committee, we do know that there is a change in offensive coordinator here. I do think that's very important to point out. Clint Kubiak has exited the building. It's possible he takes his committee with him. But as I have pointed out in previous videos when talking about Kubiak and Ashton Jeanty, Seattle using two running backs is something that predated Kubiak. The new offensive coordinator, Brian Fleury, hails from San Francisco. So technically speaking, the usage could go multiple directions, but at least we do know that the run game will continue to be a heavy focus of the Seattle offense, and Seattle will likely continue to use multiple backs rather than transitioning to giving a rookie 340 plus carries off the rip, right? My fear with Price is that we will see him creep into the low end RB2 range, maybe a little bit higher. It's not going to be hard for that to happen. A few hype videos and coach speak is all it's going to take for him to jump Jaylen Warren, Bashal Tutin, and David Montgomery. Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker combined for over 400 carries last season, and Seattle was third most in rush attempts last season, so there's plenty of volume to go around. Make no mistake about that. And I talked previously about liking Emmanuel Wilson as a late round draft pick for this reason. Seattle does appear to be very optimistic about Charbonnet's timeline. Realistically, though, I don't think there's any logical reason for them to rush him back in week one. Now, there was video that surfaced this week showing Charbonnet working out on the field at OTAs, but it is important to note he was not participating. It was some light rehab work on the side. But maybe that actually works in our favor. Maybe that is good if you are interested in drafting Price, because his ADP has to stay in the mid RB3 range at best to be a very good value pick. We don't want to overdraft him because Price profiles as the direct replacement for Kenneth Walker, and we know that Kenneth Walker's upside was capped by Zach Charbonnet's presence. So you don't want to draft him in the range of guys that are very clear 3-down backs. With all of the bodies in the backfield and the fact that we know that they used a very specific split last season and they could do the exact same thing this season, it does make Price a risky pick. Ricky Pearsall's ADP isn't in a high risk range, but he is definitely one of those people that everyone thinks will either be a complete draft steal that will pay off massively at his price, or he will fade into oblivion this season. It is absolutely a high risk pick because despite it not being an egregious draft pick, we have zero evidence that he can actually stay on the field. We've had strong games that were statistically very encouraging, but it's very tough to build on that when, again, you physically can't stay on the field. Now, obviously, the start of his rookie season was not his fault, but he did suffer a hamstring injury during training camp of his rookie season. Then the same thing happened in the 2025 offseason. Then he suffered a knee injury in season that he continued to re-aggravate over and over again, along with an ankle injury. So while the ADP isn't bad, there is a reality where yet again he is a complete null and void pick. And that is not fun because I experienced it last season with him. It was not cool. But I continue to have faith and I'm willing to take that risk with him in 2026. I'm not particularly threatened by Dejon Stribling's pick. The 49ers moved on from Jawan Jennings, and Jennings was really one of Kyle Shanahan's guys. Profile-wise, Stribling is the clear replacement for Jennings directly. But that role is not a wide receiver one, right? And when it comes to Mike Evans, while I do 100% believe that he is the wide receiver there, he's got to be on the field to do that, right? That's the caveat, because he is a 32-year-old wide receiver whose hamstrings are literally hanging on by a thread. Obviously, the odds of him making it through a full season at this point are a little bit slim, but it can happen, right? In the event that he is able to play the majority of the season, that's not necessarily a bad thing for Ricky Pearsall. Mike Evans is going to continue to be treated as the clear wide receiver one, and deservingly so. The man on the field is the best option always and forever, right? Because he's Mike Evans, right? Last year, that opened things up early on for Emeka Egbuka because the lockdown corner has to shadow Evans. You cannot let him beat you. So even when Evans is on the field, his presence is a benefit to Ricky Pearsall. So the personnel on the field doesn't actually add up to a massive risk for Ricky Pearsall. In my opinion, it is literally just whether or not he can stay on the field. So I am not of the opinion that DJ Moore has hit a cliff and is now mid-stage Allen Robinson, right? Because I've seen those comps going around. Yes, playing a full 17 games and coming away with 50 receptions on 85 targets and 6 touchdowns is disturbing. But the Bears were a weird setup from the jump last season. They switched to a far better system, but they added 2 extremely talented rookie pass catchers, and the offense was very well balanced. They were top 10 in pass attempts, but they were top 5 in rush attempts. It's just very easy to overlook how heavy and committed to the run they were because it was a committee that made it kind of look like, no one's really thriving from a run perspective, but it was a really good committee. Those guys did well. It was highly effective. So a team that leans on the run and makes a significant increase in rush attempts compared to 2024, and then adds 2 very gifted pass catchers with a quarterback who likes to spread the ball around and doesn't lock in on one target, I'm not surprised that no one stood out, ironically, other than Rome Odunze early season, before all the injuries happened and then Colson Loveland separated himself from the crowd. We all wanted DJ Moore to be traded last season, but to the Bills? Oh, no. That was not my preference there. I didn't ask for that. Josh Allen is a streaky passer, and that's not an insult to him. It's not a capability issue. He is streaky because he doesn't have to consistently push heavy volume. He can win a game with less than 200 passing yards fairly easily, right? He can throw for extreme volume when necessary and dial it back when it's not needed. That just naturally creates volatility for pass catchers, and that is what we have seen now for years under Joe Brady. It is not a coincidence that we have had back-to-back seasons of less than 500 attempts from Josh Allen. The offense hasn't really been an issue, right? So I find it hard to believe that all of a sudden they're just going to decide, hey, we need to flip this up and just push 40-plus attempts on a pretty regular basis. No, they're not looking for more volume. They're looking for better pass catchers to be more successful with the volume that they have. And we have to remember that unlike the Bears, who thinned out their receiving core, right, their pass catchers, the Bills didn't do any subtraction. So we've got DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Skylar Bell added, and they clearly still want to try and reform Keon Coleman because you can't just waste that draft capital, right? So even if the Bears did, by a miracle, add 100 attempts, is the 100 attempts really going to be enough for all these pass catchers? No. I got a bad feeling this is another season of yet less than 100 targets again for DJ Moore. I haven't minced words about Denver this offseason, and I'm not going to start. I hate it. Yeah, I hate it. I hate it for everybody not named Bo Nix. Congrats to them. No insult. You made effective moves towards the Super Bowl. Good. But you didn't consider my fantasy team. Really? I needed Waddle. I needed Waddle to be a high-volume wide receiver one on my favorite dynasty teams, and you don't care about me, Denver. I had plans for that, man. I'm sure y'all did too. I had plans, y'all had plans, and the plans did not involve Denver. Denver's wide receiver room is one of, if not the deepest in the league, and we already had a very irritating situation last season with the surge of Troy Franklin, who, by the way, is not going away, and the intermittent use of guys like Pat Bryant and Marvin Mims, making it so that while Courtland Sutton was technically the wide receiver one, there wasn't a big main consolidated target, meaning that one week, it was Sutton having 6 receptions, 100 yards, a touchdown, woo, yay. And then he gave you like a week with 1 fantasy point. Yeah. It was not predictable either. It was not really coverage dependent. Now we throw Waddle in. No, I'm good. I'm good on that one. And it's sad, right? Because it's a high volume offense. They threw the ball over 600 times last season. And while Bo Nix does check down a lot, that's part of it, right? But really the truth is they're so deep at receiver and they can adjust at will, right? So yeah, this one doesn't really require a deeper breakdown. That's it. Too many talented bodies, ball spread around. Courtland Sutton could go on this list as well. He just has a lower ADP, so Waddle is the riskier asset. I got some pushback on a previous video, so I wanted to include TreVeyon Henderson. I fully understand why people think Henderson is a good target. Honestly, that's what makes him perfect for this video. He is one of the more polarizing guys in terms of reactions that I've got outside of Christian McCaffrey when I'm talking about him. So seriously, side note, you guys got to stop coming for my head when I say that Christian McCaffrey is a regression candidate. That is factual, historically proven. Whether you like it or not, he is the player this season most likely to not make it past week 4. I don't make the rules. But Henderson is interesting, right? Because objectively, he has extremely high upside. We have seen it with our own 2 eyes. We know that this man can pop off very easy. And my God, what he would do with 300 carries, right? And the production that we saw from him was very impressive, right? There were no production issues in theory or talent issues, right? And his ADP isn't egregious. It's roughly in the same spot that we saw last year. So what is my concern here? Well, my concern is that Ramondre Stevenson is not going away. And I know you don't want to be threatened by Ramondre Stevenson. Who does, right? You don't want to say, oh my God, Ramondre Stevenson, I'm scared, right? I get that. I do. But TreVeyon Henderson's role was minimal until Stevenson got injured, right? And then we saw breakout ceilings from him with ungodly games. And it appeared that, like, hey, he's retaining this. Then we unfortunately started seeing meaningful touches, goal line touches in particular, returning to Ramondre Stevenson. And then we got to the playoff run by New England, and those meaningful touches turned into far more than that. It was literally just Ramondre as the RB1 the entire playoff run. There was no injury issue. That was just a choice that New England made. And I'm highly concerned about that because when the games mattered, when the games were the most difficult, they turned to the reliability of Ramondre. And times will be a lot more difficult for New England with this schedule that they have this season compared to last season. The way that we are feeling about running backs in terms of what we want is not always the way that coaches feel. So we can feel that TreVeyon Henderson should be the starter, right? Because it makes logical sense to us. But if Josh McDaniels feels good about Ramondre and trusts him, our feelings don't matter. Now, I will say this, right? I have confidence that the end result could easily be for TreVeyon Henderson, could easily be 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns because Henderson does not need 15 touches a game to get there, right? But there's the problem. My best advice to people in general is you do not look at the sum total of a season. You look at the ride. How did we get there? Was it a good experience? Did the car drive great the other way? Or was there stop and go traffic the whole way? Did it break down a little bit, right? If Ramondre exists, the chances of us having very big boom bust swings from TreVeyon Henderson is very high. And the end result will look good. But the experience, not so much, right? In some formats, you can work with that, right? But in a typical league, I don't know how much you want a guy that you have to start on a weekly basis because you cannot miss out on those 30-point games, right? But you also really can't afford to have the weeks where you unexpectedly get 2 fantasy points multiple weeks in a row. So at the end of the day, it just depends on your risk tolerance, right? You want the high upside. Are you willing to roll him out there knowing that the floor can be extremely low if things go sideways? If you want to go through that, more power to you, have at it. But just be aware, you are taking a big risk. We talked about this in the year 2 fades video. I love Oronde Gadsden. There's promise there for sure. But the most likely outcome is that he is the 4th look in targets, maybe 3rd if we're lucky. And my preference for guys that I'm drafting with a top 12 pick at the position for tight end is that you have to be the 2nd look or better, right? I want the upside. I want to shoot for the moon because I can stream mediocrity, right? I can find it easily. And yes, Mike McDaniel is the new offensive coordinator, and we got that lovely Jonnu Smith year. And for a hot minute, lots of touchdowns to Darren Waller. But hyper-targeting Jonnu Smith with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle on the field was not a good strategy. It didn't work. It was cool from a fantasy perspective for Jonnu Smith if you rostered him, but it was highly ineffective football. They would lose a game and only score 12 points and have under 200 passing yards, but somehow Jonnu Smith had 9 receptions on 11 targets for 48 yards and a touchdown, right? With a quarterback like Justin Herbert. Yeah, maybe that was the path they needed to go with Tua. He's different, right? But with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, the most effective offensive utilization would not be just to hyper-target Oronde Gadsden. Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston will be the primary looks over Gadsden. And it's possible that Trey Harris could be as well. And then when you have a strong 3-down back like a Marion Hampton, yeah, I'm not seeing this translate to Gadsden as the top look. We might see, now caveat, we might see an increase in red zone targets, right, for him because the offense will run more effectively, but probably not targets in general. So maybe some more touchdown upside, boom bust maybe, but not a consistent high volume look. I can't look at Gadsden with the Chargers offense, with that receiving core, and confidently say that he will be one of the first 2 looks. As long as David Njoku doesn't garner a decent amount of snaps, I do think that he's a safe-ish pick to be a low-end tight end 1. But again, I'm not seeking to put significant draft capital for a low-end tight end 1 because I can stream that. I want the higher upside guys. And of course, Jaxson Dart. Honestly, I'm not going to belabor this one because I've done this spiel like 20 times at this point this offseason. I don't like Matt Nagy. I never will. I will never trust him with a young quarterback, and you should not either. The ability to run an offense with Patrick Mahomes designed by Andy Reid is not a skill set. I could do it. You could do it. I don't trust Matt Nagy. I welcome him to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, man. Step up. Do it. That would be wonderful. I would like that. I have Jaxson Dart on a dynasty team, and I was not expecting Matt Nagy to be the one coaching him, so I need him to put up. So please, prove me wrong. But I don't think it's happening. It also doesn't help that we've got this ambiguous timeline on Malik Neighbors. If Neighbors is delayed or not in peak form, Dart will be reliant on Darnell Mooney, Darius Slayton, Malachi Fields, and Isaiah Likely, who I do think would probably be the first look behind Malik Neighbors, right? So we also know that the Giants want to lean on the ground game, right? And we also know that Jaxson Dart has problems not being reckless as a runner. Some people are true believers, and they will draft him as high as QB 6 or 7, particularly if Malik Neighbors is healthy. Others, like me, I need a steeper discount on him to make that investment. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tara Time. I am also live every Wednesday on YouTube at 8 p.m. EST, so make sure that you stop by and chat. It is always a good time. You can ask me any questions that you want. You can also subscribe to my Substack if you want to support me another way. And if you are looking for new fantasy football tools in 2026, look at Player Profiler. You can use my promo code TARA for 25% off at Player Profiler.